No, I just started, but I do have a
Session. My name is Lance Manning, and we are going to talk about what you just saw in that video. What was it that you just saw? That was the Texas Healthcare Challenge. We are affiliated with Health Wildcatters, which is based here in Dallas. And Health Wildcatters is an accelerator group that funds startups from all over the world. And today we have a great panel, which I'll introduce in a minute, and have them come and join me on the stage. We're going to talk about what is the Texas Healthcare Challenge, and we're also going to hear some stories from people who have been and graduated and are doing some amazing things. So first I'll start with what is the challenge. It is a hackathon. You've probably heard of hackathons in the last 5 to 10 years. And these are events where people get together and they hear problem pitches, and people are trying to solve some type of scenario in healthcare. That can be something they're working on as a doctor, or if they're a patient or just a normal, regular person, they want to help solve. And there's a lot of funding and a lot of successful companies that have been founded by people who are not medically trained, but who are consumers of healthcare. And so it's a great model to get people together, to ideate and come up with solutions. And some of those teams that get together form companies, some just make great connections and network. So we want to tell that story, and I'll introduce the panel. We'll come on up and we'll get started. So let's have Cindy McCoy, who's one of our co-directors. She's helped us in a number of these events. Go ahead and have you sit here. And James Griffin, he also is a graduate of our first event, and he's in the healthcare software space. So he's started a company, helped building software and working on projects in that area. And then we also have Shireen Abdullah, who is a CEO of Younglish, which is a company that formed and was benefited greatly from their involvement in the Texas Healthcare Challenge. So let's go ahead and get started. Actually, I'm going to sit here and let's have you go to that one down there. All right, so really quick, first off, I'd like to thank Dallas Startup Week for sponsoring this event. I've been in Dallas and the DFW area for over 10 years now, and it's really awesome to see the startup community coming together to provide resources for those in our community. And our goal today is to give you some ideas and make connections with you. If you have questions about starting a company or want to learn more about ways to get involved, we'd like to learn your stories and obviously open the floor up to questions as we go forward. So the Texas Healthcare Challenge has had 4 events starting in February of 2019. We had one in August of 2019, February of 2020, and then what happened after that? everybody took a break from in-person events, and the video you saw was pre-COVID. We did an event this March, which was virtual. So instead of having everyone there in person, we did Zoom and Discord, and it actually turned out okay. It was kind of tough to have that person-to-person connection, but we were able to do it. And we're planning another one here in February of 2022 that is going to focus very much on female entrepreneurs, women who are in STEM, and we're looking for some funding from the SBA. We applied for some, and we're hoping to win that. What else? So I think I'm just going to stop there and let each of the panelists introduce themselves, tell them a little bit about their background, how they were involved in the challenge. We'll hear more of the company story from Shereen as we get through that process, but we do want to take your questions and have this be an interactive event that goes until 4:30. All right, Susan, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cindy McCoy, founder of the Entrepreneur Things, wellness enthusiast, and futurist. I enjoy digging into complex problems and futuristic movies, so technology was a natural fit. My technical career took a non-traditional route as it evolved from technical support, network and software implementation, project and product management, and consulting. Simultaneously, I became the traveling spouse, living in 7 different states. Can you imagine the anxiety of starting in a new place and not knowing what to expect? One strategy implemented was partnering with Fortune 500 and startup companies in healthcare, technology, and financial services. These experiences demonstrated range and provided strength to start a company. I heard about Health Wildcatters at Dallas Startup Week and began attending happy hours, joining teams, and pitching problems. And later, I provided clarity and direction as a hackathon mentor and co-director. The opportunity to participate in a hackathon, to break down complex problems, and engage with industry and academia leaders, professionals, and entrepreneurs like Lance, James, and Shereen. It was exciting. It was at a hackathon pitch that I pitched the first idea, healthcare GPS, put together a team, and the Entrepreneur Things was born. Our products and services center around new product development and digital transformation. Our mission to support entrepreneurs defining the future across the world as part of the future of work. The future of work is about people and technology engaging to create in ways we couldn't have previously. Why hackathon? It is a great environment to learn, network, and hire talent. Just as an architect thinks about the blueprints before investing in a building, consider attending a hackathon if you're interested in healthcare and want to know more, have an idea and want to test it out, want to hone or up-level your skills, or simply meet great people. I believe hackathons are a component of the future of work. I mean, think about it. Where else would you find people getting together, freely giving up their weekend to work on complex problems? Just by attending, participants demonstrate a growth mindset and adaptability. Those are key elements in navigating the future. Who do you know that would like to join us in reimagining healthcare and the future of work? I'm B. Cindy McCoy. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. James.
Hello, hi, my name is James Griffin. I'm the CEO of Bean. My company, basically what it does is we're a custom software development firm. for fast-growing health tech companies, primarily specializing in C#, Microsoft Azure, and JavaScript. My background is pure technology, tech, programming. I got started at programming at 16, where I taught myself how to code, went to something called the Texas Academy of Math and Science, graduated that. Eventually I attended University of Texas at Dallas on a full-ride scholarship, actually doing computer science. While I was during my school years, I was constantly founding companies. None of them worked out. So just, kept founding startup after startup. The last company that I ended up doing, while I was doing it to fund it, and because I was paying students with my internship money to fund it, what I was actually doing was I then started consulting on the side. My consulting was really taking off. Companies loved it. What was happening is we'd do one project, they'd hand us more money, and then more money, and then more money. And then eventually it's like, wait, what am I doing with my life? Why am I focusing on this other thing that isn't working, this product company? So eventually I pivoted over. I moved over my 2 employees, because we were 3 people at the time, over my consulting firm. It's been about 3 years since then. Now we're rapidly growing. We're about 14 people. And we keep growing, we keep expanding. Why I kind of attended it was I'm actually a mentor at Health Wildcatters, kind of helping with some of their technology initiatives, some of their helping fast-growing startups really understand, okay, how do we architect our solution? How do we build it out? How do we scale from 1 user to 10 to 1,000? How do we design corporate reporting? All those technology decisions. So that's kind of how I learned about the event, how I attended the first ever event. I attended it more for 2 reasons. One, from a networking standpoint, because most of my network is going to be technologists. It's always great meeting people outside the technology field, meeting healthcare people, meeting business people. I'm a big networker. It's actually how one of my 14 people has actually attended the Health Hackathon and introduced by Lance, because I didn't meet him during the event, but afterwards he was like, hey, you should meet this guy. Turns out he was a great person to hire, and he's now been with my company 2 years and counting. So for me, at least as a business owner who's very busy, it was still a very good experience, because it increases my talent, and also gives me a very good way of seeing how talent interacts in the place without actually committing a large salary to them. So it's a very low risk environment. Kind of a second thing that's always fun is that my background's in programming. That's what I like doing. But as I run a business, we're growing too much. I don't have any time to program anymore. I have to manage people. So it was always fun. What I did during it, I actually created an application. So I actually created an app for my team based on kind of the workflow experts. Obviously, it went nowhere. My team actually wanted it to go somewhere, and they're like, James, build it for us. Can't do that. Way too busy. But from a standpoint of, it was still very fun. And the benefit, and I'm going to touch on networking, it opened up some interesting medical connections. I'm under NDA, but there was a medical association that I got connected with, because it turns out one of the people there actually was involved with that association on a board membership level. So just, expanding the connections, expanding your network into it is very valuable, at least for someone like me, who my goal is always meet people and how can I recruit more people, because I'm always hiring software developers, always hiring, PMs, always hiring account managers. So especially because we sell into healthcare, I love meeting people in healthcare.
So we've heard a little bit about people who've attended these events and who is welcome to attend. We invite all kinds. So anyone in healthcare, we especially have a premium on those who have specific skills like programming or coding or graphic design and want to be involved in healthcare. So you've heard just 2 with different backgrounds who attended, and now we'll hear from Sheree to hear how her story goes.
Yeah, sure thing. So these are going to be hard follow-ups, y'all. I should have been first on that. So hi everyone. My name is Shireen Abdullah, founder of Yumlish. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with a chronic condition. I had turned to my doctor at that time, tried to understand from him what I could do differently in my health, to which he pretty much just told me, eat healthy. And that was the end of that conversation. I didn't quite know what that meant to me, especially as a person of color who grew up eating ethnic foods. It really seemed like ethnic foods were being demonized for being too fatty or too full of carbs and things like that. And really came to realize that any kind of food can be unhealthy, but you just have to learn and have the education and knowledge to eat it differently and eat it better. And so with that, created Yumlish. And what we do at Yumlish is we provide culturally adapted nutrition education. Right now we focus on Hispanics with diabetes. We have a huge community here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that is largely underserved by the status quo that exists, which is what we've seen through COVID, unfortunately. And so what we do in our programming is take that very culturally tailored approach in providing them care within the context that is of most important to them. So that's the work that we do. In my background itself, so I come from a non-healthcare background. In my background, I've been a project manager. I have an MBA. I've managed projects for engineering firms in the past, in fact. And just went through that and realized, what am I really doing? What is the mark I'm leaving behind? How am I impacting lives? And I'm sure there was impact through the work that I was doing, but I didn't feel as connected to the work that I was doing at the time. And so switched gears, came entirely into this health space, and I just walked into it with the mindset that I'll just soak in. I'm just going to be a learner, and I'm just going to talk to different people, learn from them. And that's how sort of this foray started. I had a completely different idea of what Yumlish had to be, and it has driven, since then, because of the feedback that I have received from people around me, including Texas Healthcare Challenge, where I was able to connect with folks who knew a lot more about healthcare, who understood the problem a lot more intimately, who were willing to share. And so those are the kinds of opportunities in accelerators and boot camps and things like that. When you open yourself up, you'll be surprised how much people can share back with you. And the connections that we made through that. In fact, one of the individuals who was in my team, he ended up he's an advisor for us. He's actually advisor/team member. He doesn't know that last part yet, but he is also a team member. And so those are the types of connections that you make that you can't really emulate in other environments.
So, tell us a little bit more, Shireen, about coming to the event. What kind of where was your business model then, and how did it change right after that? Obviously, we made some great connections. We have a lot of people in the room that were at the prior session. We talked a lot about healthcare startups and legal things. But anyway, business model. How did that pivot happen? Did it happen after the event?
Yeah. So when we had come to Texas Healthcare Challenge, this was year 2, so 2019, was it? Yeah. So 2019, I was still trying to navigate and understand what Yumlish needed to become. At that time, I was connecting with, again, just soaking in, just sort of being the sponge to take in and digest and understand how could this turn into a business. In fact, Jazz, who's right there, I'm gonna call her out. She's been like, "Girl, you got this. You can do this." And I'm like, "Okay, I can." And so that's the kind of push and drive that you need to propel you forward.
You said it nicer than I did.
Well, yes, I had to edit it down. But those are the types of people that you need in your life to really push you forward. And so coming to Texas Healthcare Challenge, we were still struggling with figuring out the revenue model, I remember. And while we come into the challenge with a semi-related yet different idea and all of that, but what I took away from it was to understand, what did the business model really need to look like? How could we hone in on a sustainable revenue model? And coming into it, talking to various even mentors that had come through the program, and just learning from them, understanding where those gaps were. In fact, one of the mentor that I mentioned just a little bit ago, he helped us understand, listen, what you're doing specifically in the Hispanic community, there's something here. You need to double down on the strategy and go out and figure out how to do this differently for them. So I sort of went with that. I was like, all right, let's go out there and do it. So the hackathon, sort of wrapped up from there, and we're like, all right, let's go out and run these in the community, and we did. Well, when I'm talking bootstrap, I'm not kidding. It was extremely bootstrap style. I mean, we're getting volunteer dietitians in those days. Like, who is willing to give their time to try to work this model to try to see what this could even be, possibly? In fact, I remember just a quick side story. The 2 days before we were starting this pilot that I had, I'm talking about Band-Aid together. This program, 2 days before that, the dietitian that was going to lead the program, her father passed. What do you do? What do you do in an instant where you're like, but no, I don't, I have this strategy though. And it's like, I don't care what your strategy is. I don't, and so you have to kind of think quick on your feet. And so we have to quickly find, who will come in, who will step in. And I had pumped us up to the clinic we were working with at that time, because that was the face of what we were doing. And I was like, oh yeah, we're so psyched. We have this great program. You guys are gonna love it. We're gonna make all of this impact. This dietitian drops out. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? On a whim, found somebody, just talked to people who talked to someone else, and just put in, you just have to be vulnerable and say, I don't know what I'm going to do. Not to the clinic, not to the client, but out to your network and say, do you know a dietitian at all? I mean, I don't care what part of the United States they're in. I will teleconference them in. Do you know a dietitian who's willing to give time to this? And just again, tapping into that network, understanding who are the right people to talk to, and someone who knew someone who knew someone referred someone to us was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And oh, I'm down the street from this clinic. Oh, wow. When it comes together perfectly, although you don't realize it in that moment. And so things like that happen, and just being on this roller coaster of figuring things out and things not working out, and then going back to square one, and then figuring out a little bit more, and then going back to square one. It's a continuous, I feel, like the cycle of where you're going through this roller coaster. You think you have a win, and then you're like, not so much. You have to go back and figure it out. And so that's just the territory. It just comes with the territory. But it has been, I think, with every experience, it builds you, makes you stronger, helps you realize what your own strengths are, what you're capable of doing, and it's been an exciting journey. I'm not sure if anything.
So for startups, feedback is really critical. In the challenge, you iterate on ideas and you come up with a business model. And even in the Health Wildcatters Accelerator, for those companies who receive funding, Health Wildcatters has a mentor network that provides great feedback. In the weekend event, you have kind of rapid fire feedback, where people, in 10 minutes, you tell them what you're doing, and then they give you some really quick, feedback points that will help you go forward. So I want to mention that as something really critical. And Shireen, part of this, speaking about your company today, you have some free advisory board advice here.
Yeah.
We're here, James, myself, and Cindy, we can give you ideas. But of course, the audience here can ask questions. You've recently had some success, though, with funding. Now, tell us about that, because you didn't take maybe a traditional accelerator route.
Yeah.
You bootstrapped on your own. You're still running with it.
Mhm.
How are you doing? You don't have to tell us all the details, but how are you doing with your financial projections?
Yeah, so to that end, we've got, so our curriculums are approved by the CDC, by the American Diabetes Association. We have their stamp of approval, which has been amazing for us. Recently, earlier this year, we got funded through American Diabetes Association, and that was like a huge milestone, huge milestone for us. Just to share a very human moment with you, I think when I saw that press release come out, and he messaged you, Deb, and I saw that press release come out, and they put it out there, and the title said, American Diabetes Association and Yumlish. I mean, just talk about tears of joy, right? I didn't care what the rest of it said. I was just like, American Diabetes Association and Yumlish. And that's all that mattered. I think that a true moment of gratitude and appreciation for all the work that I put in, that my team, Jayleen's on my team, that she continues to put in. But it's this partnership that we have with American Diabetes Association to provide our culturally adapted programming, largely to underserved communities. Here focused right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're the only affiliate site that the ADA has here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And what they're doing with us is really trying to see how best to serve the needs of, again, underserved populations that go unnoticed in traditional programs. You will see that most of these programs, the beneficiaries of these programs are not people of color, or not as much people of color as they'd like it to be to represent the percentage of the population. And that's what they're working toward. And what we're trying to crack the nut on with them is how best to reach them and effectively provide programming that resonates with them and leads to, of course, better health outcomes as well. So that's what we're doing through our partnership with them. We have some things in the pipeline with the NIH, with the CDC. Again, when those press releases come out, I will be a ball of tears, but we have those partnerships that are coming down the road for us, and super excited to know that the work that we're doing is of so much importance, that we're getting these type of institutions to support the work that we're doing. So yeah, that's some of the partnerships.
So when people attend the challenge and teams form and people get to meet each other and network. Some may have a path like Shreen's. Others may, again, just do something on the weekend and keep in touch with each other, get to know each other, and find ways to help each other in their careers. What else? What else can we tell you? Panel, do you have any questions for Shreen? Anything you want to give her feedback on or ideas?
Oh,
or
boy. No
tear
feedback,
down?
no feedback,
So
just,
you-
no feedback, just questions. Can you share some of the strategies early on? Partnerships are very important.
Yes.
Can you share some of the strategies, how you targeted,
Mhm.
and then just high level what you can share when you did finally get your first meeting
Mhm.
with the partner?
Yeah. Truth be told, when, like I said, I came from outside the health space. I was just trying to figure out what Yumlish had to become. So I would go in these meetings with partners. I would have like this pitch to say, we're going to help people with diabetes. Well, how are you going to help people with diabetes? We're going to do nutrition programs for people with diabetes. All right, what kind of nutrition programs are you doing? I was like, I don't know, I'm going to go figure it out. But every meeting sort of grew stronger and stronger from there, right? I wish I could say I had it all figured out in the first meeting and I blew their socks off and they were like, yes, we'll sign any dotted line. I wish it wasn't that. It was a lot of failed meetings, a lot of, lady, go get your act together and come back to me type of meetings, which is fine because I needed that. At that time, I really needed that. I needed to try to figure out, again, what Yumlish had to become. And so every meeting after, in fact, we had a meeting today, and I'm already thinking of what can I do differently at the next one, because it's a continuous iterative process. You don't have it right out the gate. But if you're a good listener, if you understand, if you empathize with the person you are talking to, and if you really listen to what their problems are, if they trust you, they're telling you their problems. You just have to have an ear for it. And so going to these clinics, we had one early partner clinic that's still a champion with us today. And so we had this early clinic, and I remember going to the meeting with them, and I was just like, we're going to do nutrition programs. And they're like, yeah, what is your schedule? How often are you going to do these meetings? We have a bunch of patients. We'd love to refer you over. I was like, I have no idea. I was literally, y'all, I'm not kidding. When I say bootstrapping, when I say just hodgepodgely putting it together, a number came to my mouth and I put that number out there. And I was like, we'll do about 7. And I was like looking at their face and they're like 7. I was like, maybe 6, because I didn't know. I had no idea. And so they're like, yeah, that 6 sounds like a good number. I was like, yeah, we do 6 to 7. And so, it has been a journey. But in doing that, every time we grew our program, we understood how best to serve the needs of the patients we were working with. Being in health, HIPAA is a big thing, right? Like, how do you protect the information of the people that are trusting you with all of this data? So that was in itself a challenge to try to figure out how best can we address those types of concerns. What do I need to do? How do we need to get set up from an infrastructure standpoint for that? And slowly but surely, but even understanding that people can be incredibly forgiving along the way. If you just tell them, I don't know how to do this, they will help you. And they will show you. And then they will rub it in your face. You don't know how to do this, and you came so long, you know what I mean? But it comes from a place of love. But yeah, so in going through this, I think each time with creating those partnerships, we've been very, I think when we were first in the earlier days, we were taking any meetings. Who is willing to talk to us? The clinic like this, does the school district like this? No, they have a whole bunch of different concerns. So when I'm talking to them, when we're talking to schools specifically for teachers and staff, they weren't as much interested. I mean, they are interested in understanding how can you help the health of our teachers, but more so they're looking at how can you help me with absenteeism? How can you help me with turnover? And that's like a whole another piece of its own that you're trying to tackle. So your value proposition changes with the partner that you are trying to target. So yeah, it has been iterative. It hasn't been right out the gate, but we learn with every meeting.
So are you for profit?
We're for profit.
Okay. And how so it's all through stakeholders, do your clients pay for your services as well? How does that?
Yeah,
I guess,
so
look?
we have some grant funding that is supporting us with the ADA, and then it is covered under insurance.
So like
So-
Medicare or just different?
Yeah, so different types of insurance, we're still building out all the different insurance products for ourselves, but yes, so it's a covered service, and which was also a process of learning, because we were like, how do we get this covered? And so it turned out that there were certain codes that applied to the work that we were doing, we had a certain plan, so we were able to sort of come into that.
So I have a question, do you see, so I have a nonprofit, but I volunteer with another nonprofit in the area who, we're working, and we will deliver fresh produce. To those who can't, you know, if I take the dart, I can't go sit in a, you know, paratransit, they're not gonna drive me through a drive-through pantry or whatever. Do you see a lot of the patients having trouble with access to the right foods? Cause you can tell me what to eat all day long, but if I can't get those things, cause that might be a good connection.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, please, that is great. I would love to also chat with you. So what we do is we really take a multidisciplinary whole person approach to that. So what we do is we definitely have the culturally adapted nutrition education, but we also address socioeconomic barriers, or at least more specifically food access, probably not everything else. But within food access, we look at community-based organizations that can help us close those gaps. We're working with food banks, different types of pantries, to try to understand what are the solutions in that person's area that we can quickly plug them into, because you can't have a conversation around nutrition with someone who has a food access problem. It's a good point. It's like, well, thank you for telling me about all these fruits and vegetables. Now how do I get them? Right? So yes, no, absolutely. That is, so in our multidisciplinary approach, we're looking at the education element, addressing socioeconomic barriers, and also looking at behavior change more specifically.
I was working in dialysis, and so I would work with a bunch of nephrologists as well, kind of might be some good connections, and then also, you know, on the back end of it, the mental health. Because you're not gonna have to be mentally healthy if you're not physically, emotionally, you know, all those things too.
And it is so incredibly interrelated, right? All of this, when you're talking about food, you have to talk about exercise, we talk about stress, you talk about sleep, you talk about mental health. I think they're so interrelated, and yet so poorly funded and even looked upon, right? You go to your doctor's office. It's not a holistic approach. We have patients that come through our program today who will say, my doctor told me to stop, and these are largely, like I mentioned, Hispanic patients, and they'll say things like, my doctor told me to stop eating tortillas, I'm not gonna do that. Or stop eating rice, I'm not gonna do that. My favorite is, my doctor told me to get on keto diet. Y'all? And this is happening time and again. This is not, these aren't, you know, doctors only get that 10 minutes with you if you're lucky, and at the end of it, they're moving on to the next patient. And if you're not asking the right questions and understanding the resources that are available for you, you're at a disadvantage right up there, right? And then on top of that are the socioeconomic barriers.
So your business model is that the recipient of your service doesn't necessarily pay the service. It's Medicare, Medicaid, you know, whatever. They come in and say, hey, you're not gonna get this support from your doctor. But a specialist or someone who's an expert can give you this nutritional guidance for your lifestyle. Okay. In terms of IP, software, you know, your unique approach, how is it set up? I'm pointing to James here since he's the software guy, but any thoughts on, you know, where you go? Because someone could, you know, enter this market and do something similar. How do you put that barrier up?
Yeah, so a couple of different things that we're doing. So one, we have our culturally adapted curriculum. So that's one way that the curriculum itself is different from what's already out there. But even moving beyond that, right now the way we deliver our programs are entirely through web and text. You're not an app, and you don't aspire to be one at the current moment. Just because we realize to reach the population that we're serving, they're not as tech savvy. We want to make it as accessible to them as possible, easy for them to get on with us and start our programming as possible. So we make it incredibly easy from that standpoint. Now, over time, though, where we're headed, and I'm sort of going to give you the longer-term view of where Yumlish is headed. What we realize is that for every dietitian, for every full-time dietitian, the maximum capacity a dietitian, and this is even outside of Yumlish, a dietitian would be maybe one dietitian for every 100 patients. Where we want to be able to take this to, and where that IP is going to come in, is really create an AI-based model that is a human-tech hybrid approach to nutrition therapy. that can take into account things like your cultural background, your budget, your seasonal ingredients in your area, all those different things, and providing you nutrition therapy more real time in your home. And taking that ratio from 1 to 100 to closer to 1 to 500, even potentially 700. And that's where a true IP is going to come in. Is taking
What do those numbers mean, the 1 to 5?
the one, so for every dietitian right now is 100 patients. We want to scale that to 500 patients.
Oh, wow. Great.
And so that's in fact the NIH one that we're going to be working on with them.
And that kind of actually plays into what you're noticing in the market right now. Is one of my beliefs, having talked to a lot of healthcare executives, a lot of healthcare software guys, a lot of health tech people. A lot of the pure software plays have been done. As in, if you're pure software, that's why you've noticed kind of in the industry, both in healthcare and at large, a lot of people are moving to it's called tech-enabled services, where basically you're taking something that's traditionally a service model and then enabling it via technology, because there is still a vast ocean of things that need to be done with services, but enabling them via tech to get better customer service, to get better scale, all that's a blue ocean. If you try to make, a pure software play, it can be copied by software guys. But the real IP, and you'll know she said it, was with her services, because that's really where the value gets, and that's hard. It's hard to copy people's operations. Software, you can copy it. So, yep.
Check mark on the.
Yeah,
side.
All right then.
Question. Yeah, I mean, it's really great program you're doing. And I have just one question, how do you track the improvement among your population yourself? Or how do you track it?
Yes, sir.
Can you restate the question so our audience viewing can hear?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I understand correctly, you're talking about impact on outcomes and
Yeah.
what does that impact look like? Yeah. So as far as impact on outcomes is concerned, we're showing health outcomes. So what that looks like is we're able to show through our programs, we're able to show weight loss on our participants. And more importantly, what I'm really proud about is reducing A1C levels. For those who are not familiar with diabetes, A1C is a measure for diabetes that's done in your lab work, especially if you have either diabetes in your family or things like that. That's something that is checked in the lab work, in the blood work itself. And so within our last cohort, in fact, I'm really proud to say this, that we saw a 30% drop in A1C levels. For context, what that means is a 30% drop takes someone from uncontrolled diabetes to controlled diabetes, and even potentially reversing them out of diabetes. We don't advertise as a diabetes reversal program, but that's the type of impact that just food can have on an individual's health.
Yeah, that's good. Do those patients take medications?
We don't change their medications. We
Okay.
don't touch
They
that
do
at all.
take.
Yes, they may, but we don't touch that at all. So whatever they're coming in terms of their medications, we don't adjust that. We're not equipped to adjust that either. But we do report those outcomes back to the clinics that can then make medication adjustments. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, sure thing.
I've got a question for James. James, can you share with us, with your businesses in healthcare, can you share as much as you can, what you're seeing in the industry from your perspective? Kind
Yeah.
of trends and things like that.
So, I have a very opinionated view, because what I spend all my time is, as I mentioned, is talking with people and selling to them. So a couple of trends is that every single health tech company in the world right now is trying to add telemedicine and telehealth into their platforms. So if you're trying to do that right now, don't do that. Every single, and I'm being serious here, almost every single one of my customers has approached me being like, we need to add telehealth and telemedicine onto our platform. And I try to explain to them, I'm like, you're not the only one that's done to that. I also have all these prospects doing it to me too. And I'm like, don't do it. I'm able to convince half of them not to do it, the other half I just take their money. So, and the thing is, and then some of them work, some of them don't. So everyone right now, everyone's trying to take advantage of telemedicine. If I was you and you have a company right now, don't. Just partner with someone. You'll save so much money. You'll save so much time. There's too much stuff out there right now. Another one was health. Another one is to consider is about sales cycle. So you'll notice that different things have different sales cycle in health tech. So for example, hospitals will have a 1 to 2 year sales cycle. So a lot of times people will come up with business models that don't fit where they want to sell, and who they want to sell into. Another thing that's big right now in health tech, what I'm noticing, is a lot of process automation. So what it is that people are starting to realize, okay, I can't automate everything. We're not going to have the RPA future, the robotic process automation future, where everything is fully automated in this space. What will happen is they're trying now to automate about 80% of it. Automate things that actually can be automated and then have humans in the middle, because you're not going to get rid of it. The goal now, instead of like replacing jobs, it's all about talking about extending how much we can do with one person, because if you approach a company and you say you want to replace people, you will not have any organizational buy-in anymore. Maybe in the 90s, maybe in the 80s you could, but now people are like, no, they actually like their people. So what you talk about a lot is you talk about, okay, how am I going to scale my organization with software being the impetus? Another thing that's important is that a lot of companies, software can be copied, which is good and is bad. So what I've noticed in the market is sometimes companies will come up and ask, can I copy the other person's software? So that happens a lot in the industry, and that's how you differentiate it, is a lot of the operations aspects. Finally, what I'd say about COVID is that don't think of COVID as a transformation, think of it as an accelerant. COVID didn't transform anything. What it really did was it just accelerated medical technology progress. Look, medical technology was behind about 25 years. Now we're behind 20 years. So progress. But the thing is that it didn't change it. Like eventually what's going to happen with health tech is you'll notice this, I've noticed this, hospitals right now are really worried about home health care. Changing because changing the focus of the home, focus of the health event into actually the home, that's going to cause a lot of transformation. That's going to cause a lot of billionaires to be made. There's a lot of work that's going to be happening there because it will have better outcomes, and that's just where it's going. People like staying in their homes. Same with assisted living. You notice there's a push towards the home away from assisted living facilities. Palliative care, which is like old healthcare, is shifting to the home. So you notice a very, very, very large shift to the home. So you see a lot of wearables popping up. You see a lot of IoT popping up. So, but really, COVID didn't change anything. In reality, they thought it would revolutionize everything. Everyone will kind of regress to the norm, but things will be shifted. In a sense, the other problem that's happening in health tech spending, which is what you'll, if you ever sell into enterprise healthcare, SaaS is very commonplace now, and it used to be that SaaS, what would happen is that when you go in, you're selling to something new. Sometimes now, because they're very familiar with SaaS, at least as CFOs, now sometimes you're replacing other SaaS platforms, so it creates a whole different type of enterprise sale and how you actually sell your healthcare software into. So the market is kind of rapidly, it's immature, but it is kind of mature. And then the last kind of sales tip would be is a lot of time when you sell healthcare software, you're not actually competing against anyone, you're actually competing against Excel. So that's just a future tip.
Okay, other questions? Yeah, oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah, I'm curious about business model. You asked my question earlier, but just regardless of industry, really identifying that the right business model is an ongoing thing. And in healthcare, I would think it's just even more complicated. It sounds like your business model started to be refined after the hackathon. And then did the pilot help you kind of solidify where you want to go? And then your current business model, do you see it evolving in any other way? And how big do you want Yumlish to be? Those are three mini questions.
Yeah. We're trying to answer them all.
Okay.
So yeah, no, absolutely, and it refined and is still refining. I wish I could say that we have it nailed down to the T. We don't, and it keeps continuing to be refined. The reason being is that it is its own challenge to try to scale into insured population. So almost think of it as two buckets, right? Insured population, uninsured population. Insured population, there's a way to work with employers, with different groups, go in and provide this program. What we're setting out to do is largely focus on underserved communities, and within those, especially when we're talking about uninsured populations, then we run into sort of, well, how are we going to get people to pay for this? So one way that we're doing that today is as a fee-for-service, working with a clinic, and these are clinics that are looking to bring A1C, sort of look at that health outcome and bring those levels down across. And so they're vested in investing in that, because we realize we tried to, by the way, do a direct-to-consumer, like a B2C to them. Fell flat. Fell flat. Yeah, people people will not pay for health, and rightfully so. I mean, the system has completely, it has very little credibility left to its name, and so it has been very hard to try to run that kind of model. And so just figuring out this B2B2C hop, right? How do you first sell to that business who's then willing to let you in through their golden gates to then again sell to that consumer, right? That end user who's not paying for the service, the business will pay for it, but how do you get them to even enroll in the program and come in? So those are the types of challenges that we see. However, from a revenue model, to go back to your question, we see it sustaining partly through insurance and reimbursements and all of that, and then the other part of it being population health. And again, what we've seen is accelerated 5 years worth of this past year, and try to see what can be done from that standpoint, and showing that impact from COVID on people who have diabetes. Numbers show it. It's not me tooting the horn on what we're doing, but numbers show how these communities were impacted. And so these clinics, these health systems that we're focusing on are essentially working and trying to get grants to solve those outcomes for those populations, and that's sort of where we're coming.
And how big do you want your
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's, yes, ma'am. Oh, man, how big do I want Yemlish to be? You know, when I had to, in fact, through a similar program, I had to write a mission statement for Yemlish. And you would think mission statement, 2 lines, put it together, move on. Y'all, it took me 2 days. It took me a while because that was a big thing I was trying to answer, is what do I want Yemlish to become? So I'll tell you our mission statement, and hopefully that'll paint a better picture. But what we're doing through Yemlish is we're moving toward eradicating diet-related chronic illnesses and addressing socioeconomic barriers along the way. And so as I wrote that, I thought, man, this is a tall order that I'm putting together. But I have no doubt in my mind that it can be done. It is high time, I feel. There has never been a better time in the history of all of these chronic conditions in our nation to be able to shift that conversation. And I think it is happening. It may be slow moving than other industries, and that's fine. But it is much needed. And so through the work that we're doing, my hope is that in the next 2 years, we'll be across various cities here in Texas. And then from there, in year 3 and on up, we're going to be across in Florida, in California, across the nation. And then after year 5, we'll be around the globe.
So huge.
You heard about it here first.
Yes.
Dallas. You know, the whole concept of consumer-driven healthcare and business models is a really interesting one. You know, I think about the origin of these challenges. It actually came from the military back in early 2000s, where the Department of Defense funded people to come up with ideas on self-driving vehicles. So, you know, back in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars in the early 2000s, there were a lot of people who were killed by transport. And so they wanted to find ways to automate that process. And so they had people who volunteered. Mainly it was university students and corporations that got together. And on year 1, how many people succeeded with their course? 0. It took year 2, 3, and 4 for these groups to get together to figure out a way for a car to actually technically, match this challenge and go somewhere. And of course, 20 years later, where are we at with autonomous driving vehicles and drones? And it's crazy. So my point is, technology can be accelerated through these challenges, and especially with consumer healthcare. Just a couple years ago, we saw a company that got purchased by Amazon for $1 billion. 6 years earlier, they were a team at a hackathon.
Hey.
So MIT,
PillPack, right?
PillPack,
Yeah,
MIT Hacking
yeah.
Medicine, you probably heard of PillPack. It was an engineer and a pharmacist who got together and said, let's figure out a way to improve and automate people getting their prescriptions. How do we do it? That's where it started. And then they got into an accelerator and got a lot of big funding. Another one that's starting to get popular is called CAKE, C-A-K-E. It's end-of-life planning software. So they started at the MIT Hacking Group probably 7 or 8 years ago, and they just got funded, I think, for $4 million. But people who are thinking about themselves, their parents, how do I plan in-life things? It's all mobile app, super cool user experience. Is another one.
So I can kind of tell you a little different. So as someone who's attended a lot of hackathons, program. As someone who's attended a lot of hackathons, this one's a little different because there's a lot more concentration around healthcare people and business people and doctors. If you go to a traditional hackathon, almost everyone will be engineers. So it's a little different cohort that's going to be there. There's going to be some engineers, not very many if you had gone to a traditional one. Another benefit is there'll also be health wirecutter mentors walking around. So at a traditional hackathon, what happens is that you have corporations like Google or Amazon. You'll have employees, maybe they're hiring managers walking around looking for talent. You're going to meet some, health wirecutter mentors. Very, very valuable people to know. People like, Babson Diagnostics. I think they've just raised a ton of money. People like that where their CEOs may be rocking around. So you're going to meet a lot more healthcare executives and fast-growing health tech companies. Some of their mentors are going to be walking around, so that's also valuable. So there's pros and benefits of each. One has tons and tons of engineers. This has less, but a lot more healthcare people. So it really depends on what your goal is, and it's just different groups of people, different cohorts.
They're a little different. That's right. So back to the consumer health area. There's a lot of money going into digital health. We heard in the last session on fundraising that if you get to your seed round, it's a little easier to raise your Series A and B. You get to that $2 million stage. But yeah, I think we're going to see it. There's a company that was formed here in Dallas that's in Austin now. 5 years ago, they're a $1 billion company. They're doing at-home lab mail testing. So instead of going to the doctor to get your labs done, which is a convoluted process, they've done it all online. You order it, and you do a saliva or blood sample, and you do all kinds of cool lab stuff. So
Everly Well was founded in Dallas.
the founder is from Dallas, and she, her investor asked her to move to Austin.
Okay.
She did. And yeah, she's hired 750 people and is doing pretty well.
Gotcha.
What was the name of your company?
Everly Well is now Everly Health now.
Evelyn Health?
Everly.
Evergreen. Evergreen.
So,
Yeah.
you've heard of them.
Well, the reason I know them is one of my clients is actually a competitor of theirs.
Oh.
So yeah, I do, and I'm connected with the CEO on LinkedIn. So random stuff. Yeah. I didn't know she was a Dallas person though. Thought she was Austin.
Yeah, I mean, actually she officed at the DEC, which is an affiliate with Dallas Startup Week, and she's got a great network and all that. But her investor, I think it was a consortium of doctors who said, we're really impressed by your courage to do this impossible thing that everyone has been telling her you can't do it, you're going to waste a ton of time. But they put up $250,000, $300,000, and they said, but we want you to move to Austin because we know some people there. So, yeah, she's been off to the races since then.
It's really quick and easy. I did it.
What's that?
I said it's really quick and easy. I did it to find out my food sensitivities.
Oh, you've done
The
Everly
test.
Well.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
egg whites. Oh my God, that makes sense.
Cool, any other thoughts or questions from the audience? If not, we'll go ahead and we have one here, yes.
So just hearing and learning about this, I'm very interested in attending a hackathon. So I'm a PA, I'm a physician assistant, and I specialize, I've done infectious disease syndrome medicine, I've been doing family medicine, and I'm starting my own practice. And so it seems very interesting as far as how can we improve on an antiquated system. And then I also wanted to ask about Yemlish. Is there a way that you, because I'm just small, I'm like a sole practitioner at this point, but is there a way that you align with, I heard you saying you align with practices sometimes to help their patients? And so that's something that I would be interested in, seeing if there's a way that we could connect so that I could refer some of my diabetic patients.
We'd love to.
Yeah,
Right there. I got a team member right there, yeah, we'd love to talk to you.
Go ahead and get on the Health Wildcatters mailing list, and you'll hear about our events coming up. HealthWildcatters.com. That's free. And please, connect with that. Another question here and then one in the back.
I just want to get clarity on that website you just mentioned.
Texas,
Oh, healthwildcatters.com. Healthwildcatters is,
Healthwildcares.com.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Back here in the back.
did you have a question?
Oh, sorry, me. Yeah, I was just, one of my clients is sort of in this in-between phase of, he constantly has, he's kind of been bootstrapping this really interesting med tech product that like the government of California has been interested in. I don't know how much I can talk about that's public, but it has to do with accessibility for people with disabilities. He has a daughter that's severely disabled, and he kind of wants to make a TurboTax for filing for disability services. And he's kind of halfway built it, all through, he's very litigious, so he's won it through lawsuits he's won. I guess my question is, like, if I were, I've been trying to just plug him in with, like, he has such a great idea, and I've been trying to plug him in with sort of accelerators and even hackathons like this. So, like, what would, from his perspective, I'm just an engineer. If you have an MVP like that, that's like shown so much promise, like where would you plug that in at in order to, I guess, increase its visibility?
So I want to ask a couple questions here. Is it class 1, class 2, or class 3 device?
I'm the
This is
UX
the-
guy, so I just
Okay.
had to make sure that it was ADA compliant.
Okay, gotcha.
My engineer is on a meeting with him at the moment.
Cool.
So
Love to
if he was here, he could probably tell you. But it's mostly it's an application. It's a web app for now.
It's like a software, not so much a device, is it?
It's not a device. It's just it's a tool that is more because his issue is that if you don't dot your I's and cross your T's, and there's like a million different non-standard ways of filling out these forms, you have to repeat the process over and over and over again. So we've worked with him on building this thing out and trying to make it easier and minimize those friction points when it comes to, victims, honestly, with people that, they're just trying to get the help they need and they don't really have access to it. So he's quite an interesting guy. He's had COVID 1 and 2. So
So to answer your question specifically, you probably know about all the. So for example, Health Wirecutters is one. You could go out and apply. I think they have a cohort every kind of year. They do give some investment. They take some equity. Then there is There's Y Combinator, obviously. There's TechStars. And then, you start looking at, there's Mass Challenge. That one may also be a fit for him. That one I don't think takes any equity, but then they have, grants at the end, depending on how you do. Those would be kind of the 4 I would kind of bring up from a standpoint on it, on like things that could, help accelerate him forward.
I
Yeah.
would, if I can just add to that, I would say focus more on the health accelerators over some of the general ones. The Y Combinator is great, absolutely amazing. It can rocket ship the company, but I would say focus more on that niche just because what he's doing is such a specific niche, even in the broad healthcare. I would say go with the health accelerator program that has healthcare mentors. The other thing is going to be wherever he is in sort of building this, I would say, as close as he may be to having a final product, I would say ask him to, if he hasn't already, run it by the top users that he thinks will pay for this. Because time and again, and I'm not sure the panel here will agree with me, but time and again, if you jump into that development without already having some commitments or paid users or someone with an interest in doing that, sometimes you end up building something, not knowing much about this, but you end up building something that there aren't as many users for.
And he's actually it's being built. He's a paying client, so he has funding from various means, but we're basically at the point where we've finished all the back end. We've finished out kind of everything except for that user interface. It's like everything on the back that like the legal team has to look at has been built out, and it's really he's just looking at putting the icing on the cake at this point. And it's kind of like He's
sounds
been
like,
building
you
over
know,
like 3 years.
The accelerator could be a good resource, but also maybe a team building opportunity, which is, you know,
Mhm.
how can he find people that can either be advisors or, you know, co-founders? Or,
Mhm.
you know, are you looking to see how he can get it out? He's got it kind of shelled up right now?
I mean, we're a development firm, so like we have meetings with him once a week. Last time I talked with him, he seemed to be looking at investors. He's based out of California, but he goes with us for some reason. He's also a Kiwi, so he says things like Brit and Kobe. But yeah, it's just we've been trying to plug him in with more stuff. He's been asking us like, hey, if you know anyone in Texas, please help me. And I was
Well,
like,
I'm sure
okay.
we'd be happy to talk with you after.
Yeah, of course, yeah,
Thanks for asking. Let's finish up with the panel. Anything you'd like to share, or what you're looking for, any goals, or, you know,
Yeah.
Maureen, you want to start?
Yeah, sure thing. Just one quick plug, California Healthcare Foundation, ask them to look them up and connect with them.
He is.
Yes, perfect. So last thoughts from me, I think, yeah, what we're looking for next. So we're looking for, we're fundraising. So if you have investors that are on your speed dial, would love to get connected to them. Yeah, we're trying to fundraise and just growing our partnerships in the community. So working with different health systems, clinics, federally qualified health centers. Those are the different groups that we're looking to work with. So just growing that partnership network and then fundraising as well.
Are you gonna, with that, are you gonna expand from diabetes to like, you know, renal care?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
it's kind of a natural pathway
Yes.
to go from diabetes to
Absolutely.
kidney failure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I'm engineers. I'm always hiring. I hire interns. I train people. Great company. From a standpoint, engineers, graphic designers, project managers, account executives. I run a custom software development firm. I hire all those types of people or look to contract them out just, to really, try to really expand the business. Second thing, obviously I love meeting any health tech people, any health tech executives, even if you're a nurse, even if you're someone, anyone in healthcare. I'm a big believer in forming relationships early and often. You never know who you might meet. And one of my things is that my goal, just from a personal value standpoint, is introduce $100 million worth of deals, just introducing people and creating mutually beneficial connections. So I love meeting people, especially in the healthcare space.
So the job market is good, people are hiring, not just you.
So-
Yeah, oh gosh, a lot of people are hiring.
So by engineers, so like, for example, my husband, is a systems engineer, and he's also about to finish the cybersecurity boot camp here at SMU.
Maybe a fit.
And he wants to get the F out of he was working for Baylor, and then Baylor decided to outsource to Atos.
Yep.
And so he's with Atos, but he doesn't want to stay, he wants to grow.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Atos. Yeah, no, that's potential. Yeah, if it's because, yep, we're always hiring, and I wouldn't say always, but we've been always hiring at least for the last 6 to 9 months.
Do
So
you have an office, or do they do a lot of remote work?
fully remote. So my company is fully remote, spread across 5 states.
What's the name of it?
In Bean. Yep.
Okay, yeah, he's living his best life quarantining.
Yep.
So.
Come talk to Matt.
Yeah.
All right.
And I'm working with entrepreneurs that are looking to get their seed rounding, their first initial rounding, or have already attained seed rounding in healthcare, financial services, or technology.
Okay, everybody, well, thanks so much.